The email arrived on a quiet afternoon. Nestled between unread messages from university administrators and routine political newsletters, it was easy to overlook. But Barron Trump had always been sharp, always aware of the currents shifting beneath the surface. He didn't believe in coincidences. The subject line was simple: Global Summit on Intelligence and Leadership Invitation to Debate. He clicked. The words on the screen seemed ordinary enough, yet they carried a weight that pressed into his chest. Mr. Trump, we are honored to invite you to participate in the keynote debate at the Global Summit on Intelligence and Leadership. This year's theme, The Future of Decision-Making, AI versus Human Leadership, has sparked global discourse. Given your unique background, we believe your perspective would add an invaluable dimension to the discussion. Your opponent will be Atlas Vance, AI prodigy and creator of Prometheus, the world's first autonomous debating AI. We eagerly await your response. Barron read the invitation twice, then a third time. Atlas Vance. The name wasn't new to him. A 21-year-old tech billionaire, hailed as the Elon Musk of his generation, the Steve Jobs of AI, the visionary who would change the world forever. His software had already been integrated into government think tanks and Fortune 500 companies. And now Vance was bringing Prometheus, his crowning achievement, to the most prestigious debate stage in the world. An AI designed to outthink, outmaneuver, and obliterate human opposition. The challenge was obvious. The implications were massive. If Vance won, if Prometheus crushed human opposition, it would cement the belief that AI should take over leadership roles. Politicians, judges, CEOs, the very people shaping society, all replaced by cold, efficient algorithms. And standing on the other side of that debate stage, Barron Trump. The weight of his last name was a paradox, a shield, a target, a legacy that came with assumptions. Privilege, wealth, an easy life. And yet that same name had been a burden, an expectation he had spent his life battling against. His critics didn't see him as an individual. He was a symbol of the past, of dynastic rule, of a world that AI was supposed to make obsolete. And that was why he had to say yes. Barron leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The world had already made up its mind about him. Nothing intrigued him more than proving them all wrong. Atlas Vance had been called many things: a genius, a visionary, the architect of the future. But to him, labels meant nothing. Only results mattered. He didn't build Prometheus to spark debate. He built it to end debate. From the moment he had access to his first quantum computer at the age of 15, Vance had been obsessed with the idea of perfect decision-making. The flaws of human leadership were obvious: emotion, bias, corruption, inefficiency. History was littered with failures of human judgment. Wars fought over pride. Economies collapsed due to greed. Political decisions swayed by sentiment instead of logic. Humanity was the problem. Artificial intelligence was the solution. Prometheus wasn't just another chatbot or predictive model. It was a self-learning, self-improving entity, designed to dismantle human arguments at their core. Every possible response calculated within nanoseconds. Every logical fallacy exposed instantly. And now, after years of testing in closed research environments, it was ready to be unleashed on the global stage. Atlas wasn't worried about the debate. He had seen Prometheus shred PhD-level philosophers, political theorists, legal scholars. It had never lost, not once. And his opponent? Barron Trump. A name, a legacy, nothing more. An heir, not a thinker. Atlas smirked as he refreshed his notifications. Social media was already buzzing. #Prometheus vs. Trump was trending. This won't even be fair. AI is about to expose generational privilege. Barron is walking into a massacre. The outcome was inevitable. Vance had built the future. Barron Trump, he represented the past. And soon the world would watch that past be erased. The world was watching. The Global Summit on Intelligence and Leadership was no ordinary event. It was an annual gathering of the most powerful minds, CEOs, policymakers, tech billionaires, and world leaders, assembled to discuss the forces shaping the future. This year, the spotlight wasn't on an economic recession or a political scandal. It was on a single debate. The main auditorium in Geneva was a cathedral of modern intellect, sleek, imposing, and filled with the hum of expectation. Every seat was taken, the aisles packed with journalists and analysts. Millions more watched through live streams, their screens glowing with anticipation. The moderator, a respected professor from Cambridge, adjusted his microphone. His voice echoed through the towering walls. Tonight's debate will determine a fundamental question: is human leadership obsolete? Are we witnessing the dawn of a new era where artificial intelligence can make superior decisions and eliminate human error? Or does humanity possess an irreplaceable element that no algorithm can replicate? A murmur rippled through the audience. The weight of the moment was undeniable. Then the two opponents were introduced. Atlas Vance entered first, dressed in a minimalist black suit, his steps controlled, effortless. He radiated the calm assurance of a man who had already won. As he took his place, the cameras zoomed in. His expression was one of quiet amusement. His AI, Prometheus, had already been uploaded into the debate system. A towering digital screen behind him displayed its pulsating neural matrix, a visual representation of its vast and ever-evolving intelligence. Then Barron Trump stepped onto the stage. He didn't rush, he didn't scan the crowd. He simply walked, measured, deliberate, composed. His presence was unexpected. He wasn't the heir playing dress-up in an intellectual arena. He was something else, and the audience could feel it. But Atlas Vance wasn't impressed. He watched Barron take his seat with the calm indifference of a lion studying its prey. To him, this was theater, a formality before the inevitable. The debate was about to begin. The professor nodded toward Atlas. "Mr. Vance, you may begin." Atlas leaned forward, his hands folded, his voice measured yet razor-sharp. "Let's dispense with pleasantries. The future is inevitable, and that future belongs to artificial intelligence." A hush fell over the crowd. For centuries, human leaders have ruled through emotion, bias, and inefficiency. Decisions based on instinct rather than pure logic. History is littered with their failures. Wars fought over ego, economies destroyed by greed, justice denied due to prejudice. He gestured toward the glowing digital screen behind him. Prometheus activated. But what if we removed those flaws? What if every decision was made with absolute rationality? No corruption, no personal interests, just pure optimization. The screen flickered, displaying historical failures of human leadership. Economic crashes, military disasters, government corruption. A timeline of humanity's worst mistakes. This is what humans have done. And this is what AI will prevent. The audience shifted in their seats. Some nodded, some frowned. But no one could deny that his words carried weight. Atlas leaned back slightly, his eyes locking onto Barron. "So tell me, Mr. Trump, in a world where machines outperform humans in medicine, engineering, and now governance, why should we trust your kind to lead?" A pause. A deep silence. Barron Trump remained still. His face betrayed nothing. Then finally, he smiled. And in that moment, something changed. Barron Trump was about to answer. And the world was about to see why this debate was far from over. The silence stretched. Atlas Vance had just delivered what should have been a killing blow. The logical argument was perfect. The data, unquestionable. He had laid out step by step why humanity was obsolete in leadership, why AI would usher in an era free from the chaos of human emotion. But instead of reacting, Instead of scrambling for a counter-argument, Barron Trump simply sat there, waiting. The tension in the room thickened. People shifted in their seats, some leaning forward, others glancing at each other as if expecting Barron to crumble under the weight of pure logic. He didn't. Finally, he exhaled, almost amused. Then, in a voice as calm as the stillness before a storm, he spoke. "You say human leadership is flawed, that we make decisions based on emotion, bias, instinct, A pause. Deliberate. Calculated. And you're right." The audience froze. Atlas Vance's smug expression faltered just slightly. Barron continued. "But let's talk about what Prometheus doesn't have, what your AI can't do." He stood slowly, hands resting lightly on the podium. His voice remained steady, controlled. Humanity isn't just logic. It isn't just efficiency. Leadership, true leadership, isn't about making the mathematically superior decision. It's about understanding the soul of a nation, a people, a moment in time. The screen behind him remained frozen. Prometheus, waiting, calculating. "Atlas, let me ask you something." Barron turned slightly, his gaze locked on Vance. "If AI had existed in 1776, would it have supported the American Revolution? Or would it have calculated that rebelling against the British had a 92% chance of failure and advised against it?" The room stirred. Vance didn't answer. He didn't need to. Barron pressed forward. "Would AI have told Rosa Parks to sit at the back of the bus because the probability of violent retaliation was too high?" The energy shifted. Some in the audience nodded, others murmured in realization. Barron leaned in slightly. "Would AI have told Nelson Mandela to surrender to apartheid because statistically his movement was destined for failure?" Atlas opened his mouth, but closed it. Barron had him. Revolutions, movements, change. None of them are logical. None of them happen because an algorithm calculated they would succeed. His eyes swept over the audience, anchoring them in his words. They happen because humans, flawed, emotional, unpredictable humans, make them happen. The room was no longer leaning toward Atlas Vance. It was now listening to Barron Trump. Atlas Vance clenched his jaw. This wasn't going as planned. For the first time in his career, for the first time in Prometheus's existence, the AI was hesitating. The massive digital screen behind him flickered. Lines of code refreshed at lightning speed, data models recalculating. But there was a problem. This wasn't math. This wasn't an equation with a clean answer. This was humanity. Atlas composed himself, his hands tightening into fists before he exhaled and smiled again, though this time it didn't reach his eyes. "That's a clever emotional appeal, Barron. But emotion doesn't win wars. It doesn't build economies. Logic does. A recovery attempt, a reset. Prometheus' voice calm, artificial, unwavering, suddenly activated. Historical anomalies do not disprove the overall inefficiency of human governance." A perfectly crafted sentence, clean, unemotional, cold. For every success, there are thousands of failures. The data does not lie. Human history is riddled with irrational decision-making. Some in the crowd nodded. It was a solid argument. But then Barron did something unexpected. He smiled. "You're right again." Vance flinched. The audience stirred again. Barron didn't hesitate. "Humans are inefficient. We make mistakes. We choose hope over probability, passion over practicality, and yet, here we stand." He gestured at the audience. 100,000 years ago, early humans could have calculated that staying in the caves was safer than venturing into the wild. The probability of survival was higher, but they still went. Another pause, another shift in energy. When the Wright brothers tried to fly, science said it was impossible. When space travel was first proposed, data models said it was beyond human capability. And yet, here we are. The crowd was leaning in. AI will always calculate the safest route, the most logical decision, the highest percentage of success. But it will never, never understand why humans sometimes choose the risk instead. Atlas Vance's confidence cracked. For the first time in the debate, the audience wasn't looking at him. They were looking at Barron Trump, and they were seeing him differently. Something was happening. Prometheus had never lost a debate. But now, for the first time ever, it was losing control. Atlas Vance's fingers curled tightly around the edges of his podium. He could feel it, control slipping through his hands like grains of sand. For the first time in his life, he was losing. Prometheus had never struggled. It had shut down Nobel laureates, outmaneuvered political strategists, and dismantled the most decorated military minds. Yet here, in front of a live global audience, it was hesitating. Atlas felt his stomach knot as he watched the flickering data stream on the massive digital screen behind him. Prometheus was running calculations, millions of them per second, but it wasn't finding the answer it needed, because there wasn't one. Barron Trump stood before him, calm, collected. He had pushed the debate into a realm that AI couldn't compute: human ambition, defiance, the irrational hunger for progress. Atlas exhaled sharply. This isn't over. He straightened, smoothing his expression into one of cold confidence. If logic wouldn't save him, then strategy would. You've given an inspiring speech, Barron, but let's not pretend emotion wins wars or builds civilizations. He turned slightly, addressing the audience as if peeling Barron from the conversation. Every great empire was built on power, not sentiment. Rome, the British Empire, the United States, strength, strategy, and control, not hope or gut instinct, made them thrive. A few heads in the audience nodded, a lifeline. Prometheus doesn't make reckless choices. It doesn't gamble with human lives. It removes the flaws, the inefficiencies, the risks. Atlas faced Barron again, his smirk returning. So tell me, Mr. Trump, if you had a self-driving car and a human driver side by side, and your family's life depended on reaching your destination safely, which one would you choose? A murmur rippled through the crowd. The argument was clear. AI is always the safer bet. Atlas crossed his arms, expecting hesitation, expecting a pause, expecting Barron to finally falter. Instead, Barron simply smiled. The AI, of course, Atlas blinked. The crowd murmured in surprise. For a car, Atlas! Barron's voice remained even, his words razor-sharp. Not for a nation! The shift in energy was instant. The momentum swung back to him. Barron continued, stepping forward slightly. A car follows a fixed set of rules. It takes in data and makes decisions based on probabilities. That's fine for driving. But running a country? Leading people? That's not a fixed system. There's no algorithm for understanding fear, no prediction model for love, anger, or revolution. He let the words settle. Atlas had no response. Your AI can calculate every decision with perfect efficiency, but it will never understand when to take the risk anyway. Barron's gaze locked onto Atlas. That's why people don't follow AI. They follow leaders. The auditorium erupted. Atlas Vance was out of moves. He knew it. The audience knew it. And worst of all, Prometheus knew it. The screen behind him flashed with calculations, adjustments, projections. The AI was recalculating again and again, trying to find the logical sequence to win the argument. But it wasn't finding one. Atlas swallowed. For the first time in his career, he felt something foreign clawing at his chest. Doubt. He had come onto the stage expecting a massacre. He had expected to walk away victorious, cementing his name in history as the man who proved AI was superior to human governance. But now, the world was watching him lose. The moderator glanced at both men, sensing the shift in power. Mr. Trump, you have the final word. Barron nodded, stepping forward. He didn't look at Atlas. He didn't look at Prometheus. He looked at the world. I don't fear AI. His voice was calm, steady, but the weight behind his words was undeniable. It will transform industries. It will shape our future. It will make life easier, faster, better. A pause. The audience hung on his every breath. But AI will never inspire. It will never rally people in their darkest moments. It will never stand in the fire and say, "Follow me." The room was silent. Atlas inhaled, opening his mouth. "This is why AI will never replace us." Barron cut in. "Because AI doesn't dream, AI doesn't fight, AI doesn't believe." Atlas froze. Barron turned back to him, voice stronger now, sharper. "Your machine? It was built to win debates, but leadership? True leadership? It isn't about winning." His next words hit like a hammer. "It's about standing up when you've already lost and saying, 'We go on anyway.'" Atlas looked away, defeated. The moderator turned to him. "Mr. Vance, do you have a rebuttal?" Atlas didn't respond. His jaw clenched. His fingers curled around the edges of the podium, but he had nothing left to say. The moderator took a deep breath. Then, "That concludes the debate." Thunderous applause erupted in the room. Somewhere in the audience, a standing ovation began, a wave of movement, a realization. Barron Trump had done the impossible. He had beaten the machine. The moment the debate ended, the world erupted. Within minutes, headlines flooded social media. Barron Trump destroys AI Prodigy in historic debate. Atlas Vance left speechless as Prometheus fails to counter human leadership. AI versus human leadership, and the machine lost. Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube lit up with reactions. Clips of Barron's final words spread like wildfire. Hashtags trended worldwide. #Trump's AI, #Barron wins, #Prometheus falls, #leadership matters on live news panels. Experts scrambled to interpret what had just happened. Some called it a defining moment in the debate over AI's role in leadership. Others dismissed it as a well-played emotional appeal. But no one denied its impact. Atlas Vance had entered the debate as the inevitable victor, the face of a post-human future. But Barron had walked off that stage not just as the winner, but as the symbol of something far bigger. Human resilience, human intuition, human leadership, and the world was watching. The auditorium was nearly empty now. The lights dimmed. The hum of conversations and frantic news coverage buzzed in the background. Barron Trump adjusted the cuffs of his jacket, calm, unaffected. He had done what no one expected. He had won. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of Atlas Vance standing near the stage. The once untouchable AI Prodigy was motionless, arms crossed, staring at the empty podium where Prometheus had failed him. For a long moment, the two stood in silence. Then finally, Atlas spoke. "I underestimated you." Barron didn't respond immediately. He studied Atlas as if deciding whether to believe the words. Then, with a faint smirk, he replied, "Yeah, you did." Atlas exhaled, running a hand through his hair. His voice was quieter now. Not the cocky billionaire genius, just a man who had been forced to reconsider everything. "Maybe I should have trained Prometheus to think like you." Barron raised an eyebrow. "Then it wouldn't have been AI." A pause. Atlas gave a slow nod as if, for the first time, he truly understood. Then, as Barron turned to leave, Atlas called after him, "Would you do it again?" Barron stopped, glanced over his shoulder. "What?" "Another debate." Atlas hesitated, then smirked slightly. "A rematch." Barron considered it for a beat. Then, with a knowing smile, he adjusted his jacket and walked away. "We'll see." The camera zoomed out. The world was still talking. The impact was still unfolding. Because this wasn't just a debate. This was the beginning of something much, much bigger. The debate might be over, but the conversation is just beginning. Should AI have a place in leadership, or will human intuition always reign supreme? Drop a comment below. Do you think Barron was right? Or does AI deserve another chance to prove itself? Subscribe for more intense debates and thought-provoking stories that challenge the future of leadership, technology, and power. If you enjoyed this, smash that like button and share this with someone who needs to see it. Because in a world of machines, your voice still matters.